You keep waiting for closure, for the message that never comes, for the apology that's overdue, for the moment when it all finally makes sense. But what if closure was never meant to heal you? What if it was designed to keep you stuck, staring at a door that was never yours to walk through again? Because every time you wait for closure, you're still handing them the power to define when your story ends. From a young age, you were taught to wait. Wait for them to explain. Wait for them to fix it. Wait for the moment it all makes sense. But no one ever told you that some people disappear, not because you weren't enough, but because they never were. And still, you wait. Not for them, but for permission to move on. You've confused closure with clarity, but they're not the same. Clarity comes from within. Closure is often just silence dressed as hope. You keep replaying the story. What you said, what they didn't. What could have been different if only they had stayed, explained, finished it properly. But the truth is, some people leave without explanation because they never intended to stay with intention. And you waiting for closure isn't you seeking healing. It's you delaying healing. It's you refusing to accept that their silence is the answer. Because if you accepted that, you'd have to face the one thing you've been running from. It ended. And it ended without justice. They taught you that closure comes from them, that healing only starts when they offer clarity. But that was the trap. Because as long as you wait, you stay. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally. Still checking, still hoping, still tethered to a version of you that needed their words to move forward. But you don't need their truth to validate your pain. You already lived it, felt it, survived it. And that survival is your closure. Whether they confirm it or not, you thought their silence was cruelty. But now you see it's a gift in disguise, because silence has no room to lie. It doesn't twist the story, it just ends it. And when you stop filling in the blanks with your own pain, you realize something powerful. You never needed their words to understand your worth. Their absence said enough. Their indifference told the truth. And the longer you waited for closure, the longer you postponed your freedom. But now, you're done waiting. Closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision. It's not about what they say, it's about what you choose. To stop circling the same memory, hoping for a new ending. You don't need their apology to forgive yourself for staying too long, for loving too hard, for believing too much. You gave your heart with honesty. They gave theirs with conditions. So you don't need closure to walk away. You just need the courage to stop reopening the door that was never meant to stay open. You stopped rehearsing what you'd say if they came back. Stopped imagining the perfect ending that never came. Because real healing doesn't happen when you get the last word. It happens when you no longer need one. You start creating space for something truer. Not built on confusion, not built on waiting. You start showing up for yourself the way they never did. Not with perfect answers, but with steady presence. And that presence is louder than their silence ever was. You stopped needing an ending to begin again. You realized that closure wasn't about getting answers. It was about accepting the truth you already knew, but didn't want to face. That they weren't coming back. That they weren't going to change. That the pain wasn't your punishment. It was your awakening. So you took all the pieces they left scattered and started building something new. Not a revenge story, A return to you, the version of you that no longer waits for permission to be whole. You used to think their words could heal you. Now you know your voice always held more power than their silence ever could. Because healing isn't about what they say. It's about what you finally stop believing. That you weren't enough. That you needed their explanation to move on. That your story only mattered if they acknowledged it. But you were there. You felt everything. You lived through what they ignored. And that makes your truth valid. Without their permission. Without their closure. Without their participation. You don't need to go back to understand what you survived. Now, you're not rewriting the past. You're reauthoring the present. Not every chapter needs a perfect ending. Some pages just need to be turned. And you've turned them. Not because you've forgotten, but because you've chosen yourself over the need to be understood. Your peace doesn't live in their words. It lives in your decision to stop waiting for a version of them that only exists in your hope. You don't need closure to be whole. You just need to stop bleeding for someone who never brought a bandage. There's no final message coming. No moment where it all suddenly makes sense. No ribbon-wrapped apology that fixes the silence. And that's okay. Because now, you're not living for resolution. You're living for restoration. You're no longer a character in someone else's story. You're the author. And you get to choose when the page turns, how the chapter ends, and what you carry forward. And from here on, you only carry what heals, not what holds you hostage. They trained you to believe that healing only comes after they speak. But healing doesn't wait for permission. It begins the moment you stop asking for explanations from people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need the apology. You need the release. You don't need their version of the story. You need to trust your own. Because closure isn't something they give you. It's something you create when you finally say, I don't need to know why to know I deserve better. And that is the real ending. The one they never controlled. The one you chose.